Excruciating workdays, nearly zero free time, and for most manga authors, not enough to live off of. It's no secret that the anime industry is a harsh work environment, and even that doesn't get the coverage it deserves, but there is a portion of that process that gets even less coverage than the others. The people who oftentimes create the source material. Weekly Shonen Jump, Weekly Shonen Magazine, Weekly Young Jump, Weekly Young Magazine, and so many more. The most popular magazines in the industry operate on a weekly release schedule, with Weekly Shonen Jump being the biggest of them all. It is no coincidence, of course, that some of the most popular stories of horrible mangaka health come from this magazine either. You see, making a chapter of a manga every single week is not easy in the slightest. Let's take this author's schedule for example. This is the schedule of mangaka Shibashi Hiroshi for an unspecified week. On Monday, the day the magazine goes on sale, Hiroshi storyboarded from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. 5 hours of continuous work, and after that, he would sleep from 6 to 7, and then eat breakfast at 8. He would then continue storyboarding from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and he would only stop because he has an editor meeting from 7 to 8 p.m. After that, he would immediately jump back onto storyboarding from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. You may notice on Monday, he didn't eat lunch or dinner. He sacrificed his sleep and starved himself to make sure he could meet deadlines. Also, I said he storyboards until 11 p.m., but that isn't because he goes to bed. That's because it carries over into Tuesday, where he continues to work on the storyboard until 5 in the morning, before attending another editor meeting until 7. Hiroshi has now been up for 24 hours purely storyboarding, eating only a single time. He is more or less presented with no choice, as the day after the magazine goes on sale, the storyboard is due for the following chapter. After his editor meeting, he finally gets some much needed sleep from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., where he then goes to lunch and gets back home, only to have to continue to work into the night, this time on a color illustration. Don't forget, mangaka don't only work on the chapter itself. They need to make volume covers, color pages, magazine covers, sometimes popularity polls, or any other art requested from the publisher, like for anime adaptations. He continues working until around 2 in the morning, and then he sleeps till 9. And this is when the schedule becomes a consistent 5 hours of sleep, skipping lunch and working purely on the manuscript until Friday, the manuscript being the final chapter. Doing absolutely, literally, nothing else for 3 entire days. He works on the manuscript into Saturday morning, the day it is due, sleeping until 2 p.m. again, and then skipping breakfast and dinner so we can enjoy the only 3 hours of free time he gets over the entire week. After those 3 hours are up, he has to submit the manuscript, attend more storyboard meetings, and immediately come up with a scenario to start storyboarding. Finally, on Sunday, he gets up at 9 a.m., skips lunch and dinner to solely work on the storyboard, repeat for probably years. Now, the average amount of sleep for someone this age is around 7 to 9 hours per night, and the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute has found links between sleep deficiency and many chronic health problems, including heart disease, kidney disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, stroke, obesity, and depression. And this doesn't even cover the amount of skipped meals the author had throughout the week. And going off of research done by the University of Louisville, causes the body to lower its metabolism, which can lead to weight gain, leaves you with little energy, and can cause headaches or make you feel weak and shaky. This also doesn't even cover the massive amounts of overwork present in the schedule, which is linked to an increased risk of cardiovascular disease and has a higher risk of stroke. Death from overwork is common enough in Japan that they have a specific term for it, karoshi. In 2013, a young worker in Japan clocked 159 hours of overtime in a month, and then she died. Japan has a huge problem with unpaid overtime, and that harsh work culture can be felt by examining the state of many of your favorite manga authors. Tite Kubo, the author of the wildly popular Bleach, is one example. Quote, "The one thing Kubo noticed after the serialization ended was how sick he felt. He said, I thought I could finally take a break, but something was wrong. I went to the hospital, where it turned out I had a torn shoulder tendon and such." Kubo isn't even close to the only big-name author that struggled with health issues, but Yoshihiro Togashi, the author of Hunter x Hunter, is a very notable case that some of you are likely already familiar with, as the series has been on hiatus for quite some time due to the author's poor health, releasing chapters intermittently. He would often leave author comments in the magazine about being bedridden, or having to crawl on all fours to move around, going to the hospital for severe back pains, or not being able to move his body. In 2022, he said he has been unable to sit in a chair for 2 years, talking about how he couldn't get into a position to wipe his own ass, and had to take a shower every time he went to the bathroom. It would take 3 to 5 times longer for him to do everyday movements. Eiichiro Oda, author of One Piece, who was often touted as, a beast because he could always release chapters weekly, he really doesn't take breaks, also has his own horror story to tell. On a TV show in January 2019, a comedian visited his studio to speak with him, and in it, we learned that Oda goes to bed at 9 a.m. and wakes up at 12 p.m., with his assistants following a marginally better sleep schedule. Oda often skips meals for a few days to concentrate on his work, suffering from moderate diabetes and gout from spending too much time in a chair. There are countless examples of mangaka talking about their horrid work schedules, leaving them with nearly no time of their own, skipping meals and depriving themselves of sleep. You're being overworked to meet deadlines, and sometimes your editors can be straight up abusive. There are two stories that I can find on this, one from 2014 and one from 2022. In 2014, mangaka Yu Watase talked about having headaches or feeling overwhelmed after staying up all night to hand in pages early in the morning, only to have the editor berate her and throw them back in her face to do a complete redraw of the chapter. She described the editor as bulldozing her ideas to make room for his own, telling her to draw it exactly the way he tells her. It was reported this editor treated everyone in a similar manner, and some authors were forced to give in because if they did not give in to his demands, their layouts would not be approved, and their deadlines would be missed. In 2022, a Twitter user claimed to be a manga artist drew a small comic talking about the abuse they had received from the editorial department of a magazine. The editor called their art shit, saying it would lower the standard of the magazine were it published. They would be called a low-level artist and drew this Twitter comic to highlight the abusiveness of the workplace. They also went on to state that they were not paid a manuscript fee. Pay in the manga industry is sort of a hot topic because people like to compare and contrast the pay of authors like Oda, who is writing one of the most popular series in the world, so of course they're going to get paid well. What this ignores is that many people out there making manga are not Oda. The standard page rate for manga is around 5,500 yen per page, and with around 20 pages per week for a weekly manga, that comes out to about 5.2 million yen. Now you hear the word million, you think that's a lot, but that's 38,000 US dollars per year. Looking at a lot of different websites that calculate cost of living for Tokyo, which of course not everyone's going to live in, but a lot of creators do, annual costs could range between 20,000 and 30,000 USD. And apparently this doesn't include rent. I don't have hard data on this though, so take this with a grain of salt. What you don't need to take with a grain of salt, however, are the assistants. Now, you might think that assistants are provided by the production company or something like that, but no. Assistants are paid entirely out of pocket. And according to Jason Mule, go for around 180,000 yen per month, or 1,350 US dollars for just one. This would lower that $38,000 a year figure down to about $22,000 a year. They don't only pay for assistants, but all equipment required for not just them, but also the authors themselves. Absolutely none of that is provided by the company, so if you're prepared to try and claw back a couple hours of free time a week, be prepared to shell out at least half your annual page rate earnings. A lot of the money mangaka get comes from volume sales. In 2009, it was estimated that the average mangaka makes $35,000 a year from volume sales. Please note the word average here, meaning that there are plenty of people making less than that. A certain number of authors do make a decent amount from royalties, at least from sources I've seen, but I've had a very hard time pinning down a number on that exactly, so that could fluctuate earnings dramatically. An example we could use is a series called Say Hello to Blackjack's Author, who was making 16 million yen annually from manuscripts, but had to shell out over 18 million yen on assistance, meaning the serialization itself did not even come close to covering his expenses, so he was entirely reliant on floating by on volume sales. Now, what happens if a volume sells poorly? What about the author? What about the assistants? Are they just out of jobs? Something that is insane to think about are adaptations. You might think huge successes like Demon Slayer or Jujutsu Kaisen would see huge returns for the mangaka, but in reality, they don't see much at all. Gintama's author stated that not a single yen from gross earnings for his films go to him, and they are only paid an upfront license fee. Quote, "The reason why I slog to fulfill these film adaptations to the extent that I am peeing blood is because there is a place in the world that is more wonderful than a mansion in the Roppongi Hills, and that place is in your heart," end quote. It is thinking exactly like that people in the industry love. It's been referred to as the passion tax. People grow up seeing the beauty of art, things that move or inspire them to create, and people at the top are ready and willing to exploit people's passion, because you've always dreamed of this, right? If you say no, what if you offend the people that decide your future in your dream career? What if you say no and it means you stand alone in your principles? What if you say no and people think that you're weak? According to a study in 2019, people found it more acceptable to make passionate employees do extra, unpaid, and more demeaning work than employees without that same passion. Entertainment industries all around the world will do anything they possibly can to make money off of your passion. They know that this is what you want, and they know that you will do anything to make your dream a reality. And so far, magazines like Weekly Shonen Jump do not seem to be changing all that much. Kohei Horikoshi, author of My Hero Academia, has been taking repeated breaks for his health, some even so suddenly that they couldn't take MHA out of the magazine for that week. The series is moving at a snail's pace due to Horikoshi's poor health, and Jujutsu Kaisen's author Gege Akutami was forced to take a month-long break due to rapidly declining health. Jump Plus, a new online service that publishes manga monthly instead of weekly, is a promising new venture, but it doesn't mean the people currently in Weekly Shonen Jump are any better off. And it does introduce new concerns about the pay rate per page for monthly manga. The industry is filled with people who are underpaid and overworked, and some of your favorite authors are heavily affected by this. No amount of pay really justifies the health issues that people like Kubo, Oda, Gege, or Horikoshi are experiencing, and they absolutely deserve better working conditions. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for the funny YouTube algorithm. You can check the description down below to follow me on Twitter, where I'm objectively correct all the time. You can also join my Discord, where we talk about My Hero Academia, ReZero, Jujutsu Kaisen, and stuff like that. And you can also now become a YouTube member, which basically just gives you access to behind-the-scenes content, a little badge on comments, and live stream chats, and access to some emotes. Only do so if you want to support the channel, though. But that's about it, though. Thank you for watching. See ya.